Good morning.
Hello. Morning.
Didn't hear a word then, but I'll take that as a plus. Anyway, this morning you're going to meet two editors who are completely and utterly at the top of their tree. My name is Carolyn Reynolds. I'm a producer, exec producer, and I do know that these guys can make or break a show. So it's a terribly important area for you to know about if you're interested in behind the camera, production, post-production. So I'm going to introduce and give you a little potted version, but I just want to say that well, we're going to open this out quite quickly to everybody. For people who were here yesterday, it might have been more sort of, questions at the end of sessions, whereas today I'd quite like to get questions from everybody during the session. So if things come up in conversations that you think, oh, actually, I need to ask questions about this, do feel free. I won't always see your hands raised up. I'll have moments where I think it's a good time to have questions, but we will be, as I say, taking plenty, hopefully. Rupert, who's furthest from me, to your right, has been editing documentaries for the last 20-ish years.
Yeah, 20 years.
Multiple award winner. Recent work includes The Detectives for BBC Two, which earned you an RTS nomination for Best Editor Factual last year. Rupert has cut award-winning feature-length singles and series including 7/7, One Day in London, Life and Death Row, Coppers, Bedlam, Grace and Perry, All Man, and Absolutely Fashion inside British Vogue. We'll see a lot of these clips today from Rupert and also from Jan, who is an editor best known for work on, well, it's a multitude of things, Band of Brothers, Game of Thrones, and Sherlock. Recently cut The Crown for Netflix and started out as an online editor with the short film Half-Life, Uplink, moved into TV, and has edited a wide variety of drama. So there's a real cross-section of experiences in two very different fields, and we'll give you, I hope, a great insight. So welcome, guys. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Could I start with you, Rupert?
Yeah.
Could you just give us an insight into how you started, how you got into the industry, what you were cutting, as in technology, what you were cutting then to what's now, how things have changed, but just give us a sort of potted version of.
Yeah, I mean, I fell into broadcast totally. I didn't want to do it at all. I mean, it's like kind of, my mum said to me, oh, you should do like films, and it was like, oh, shut up. And I ended up wanting to be a photographer. That's what I wanted to do, and I was obviously really good at that. And I ended up sort of going out one night trying to cut my losses, and I met up with an old school friend who was working as an assistant director for Disney, and he said, come and be a runner, come and do that. And I did that, and I fortunately did that because it was a production on a Disney production, and they had a guy called Sean Barton editing, and Sean cut Return of the Jedi, which won't mean much to you because it's sort of, but it's definitely of my generation. It was like that Star Wars film was brilliant, and it was his first job on Avid, which is this two-screen nonsense that you see here. And he didn't know what he was doing, and he was kind of like really open about all of that, and he let me sit down and have a go and have a play with stuff, and I loved it. I really loved it. And he recommended I went off to go and do some short courses about editing on that kind of non-linear machinery. And I did that at the National Film School. And then I started assisting on docs because I was sort of interested in that. And that's how Jan and I met, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I was dubbing editor on Children's Hospital, where they got a job where I had to do all the sound for 40 half-hour episodes of BBC One Children's Hospital, and Jan at that point was working for Salon, who was supplying the editing equipment. And we met, and so my first job was all non-linear. My father-in-law's a film editor, and he's sort of what I call a proper film editor. He actually cuts on an 8-plate Steenbeck. I had a go at doing that. I was crap. I was absolutely rubbish. I had no patience at all. But he would sit there with the bobbins. He was very much a sort of pipe smoking, like a sort of editor, like you could imagine, but I'm not at all like that. I have no patience like that. I have patience in other ways, but no patience.
And Jan, you had music video sort of experience to start with, was it?
My checkered past, I'm afraid. But I started at this place called the Salon, which was a film post house in Soho. So I started, sort of running. And when I started, it was all Steinbecks and Moviolas and 35mm and 16mm and terrifying. I remember the first day I arrived, there was a machine that you rewind the 35mm back and you put these white gloves on, and I pressed, it's like a foot pedal, like a car, and I pressed it and the whole thing came off and turned into this pile of film. And the guy said, "You'll never do that again." And I never did. I learned the hard way. But yeah, it was, and then what happened was it was all film, so I was around lots of film editors, which was great. And then the Avids and Lightworks arrived. This is when I met Rupert, and the computers came, and it was this natural progression. I sort of became going from, helping people on this film, and the sort of transition from film to video. And through that transition, I taught myself by other editors, the craft, and then I wanted to edit. And I thought the only way to get back to drama was, well, I could edit, so I left. Cut lots of music videos and promos and short films, and then I found myself getting further away from drama. And I was sort of in drama when I started, around these great editors. So to go back, I went back, all the way back to the beginning, and became an assistant in the cutting rooms again.
Was that easy to...
It was quite a difficult thing to do, because I sort of convinced myself, I said, well, I'm an editor, I know how to edit. But I had to sort of eat humble pie and sort of go back to the beginning and sit around these editors and literally wait for one of them to die, pretty much. And it feels like that way. It's a very difficult thing once making that transition, that break, and it's quite a difficult industry because people sort of elevate you. You learn so much, but no one really sort of goes, "This is your turn."
Yeah.
That's great. It sort of normally comes when. Strangely, in a sort of industry where someone else fails or something, someone sort of can't, or they're too busy, so it's like, you'll do. So that happened, and then the rest is history, really. I just sort of, I already had the ability to edit, so I just then applied myself back into that drama world, and what I learnt from the early days was so important.
So let's take a look at the ability to edit. We'll just have a look at our first clip and get a flavour of what we're making here. This is a clip from Sherlock.
It's not like it is in the movies. It's not a great big spurt of blood and you go flying backwards. The impact isn't spread over a wide area. It's tightly focused, so there's little or no energy transfer. You stay still, and the bullet pushes through. You're almost certainly going to die, so we need to focus. I said, focus! It's all well and clever having a mind palace, but you've only 3 seconds of consciousness left to use it. So come on, what's going to kill you?
Blood loss.
Exactly. So, it's all about one thing now. Forwards or backwards. We need to decide which way you're going to fall.
One hole or two? Sorry.
Is the bullet still inside you, or is there an exit wound? It'll depend on the gun.
That one, I think. Or that one.
Oh, for God's sake, Sherlock, it doesn't matter about the gun. Don't be stupid. You always were so stupid. Such a disappointment.
I'm not stupid.
You're a very stupid little boy. Mummy and Daddy are very cross because it doesn't matter about the gun.
Why not?
You saw the whole room when you entered it. What was directly behind you when you were murdered?
Not been murdered yet.
Balance of probability, little brother. If the bullet had passed through you, what would you have heard?
The mirror shattering.
You didn't, therefore.
The bullet's still inside me.
So we need to take him down backwards.
I agree. Sherlock, you need to fall on your back.
Right now, the bullet is the cork in a bottle.
The bullet itself is blocking most of the blood flow.
But any pressure or impact on the entrance wound could dislodge it.
Plus, on your back, gravity's working for us. Fall now.
What's happening?
You're going into shock. It's the next thing that's going to kill you.
What do I do?
Don't go into shock, obviously. Must be something in this ridiculous memory palace of yours that can calm you down, Find it. The east wind is coming, Sherlock. It's coming to get you.
It's coming to get you.
Find it.
Hello, Redbeard. Here, boy. Come on.
Come to me. It's okay. It's all right.
Come on, it's me. Oh, it's me, come on.
Come on.
Good boy, clever boy.
Hello, Redbeard. They're putting me down too now. It's no fun, is it?
So, Jan, for the bullet going in, you've basically 5 minutes of television there, which is fantastic.
Yes.
How did that happen? Was that scripted that way?
The sort of beauty of Sherlock is that he deduces stuff in his mind palace, which gives us a license to expand these sort of moments in time, which is quite fun. It's, starts with obviously the script and all that footage, but there's a moment in the script where I think sort of Stephen Moffat says, intercut from here, and that's the license that we sort of run slightly wild with it. But it was lots of fun. I mean, obviously Benedict's a great actor, which is an enormous help. But it was just intercutting between those worlds in the white room in the lab, and introducing those little moments in time, which was it sort of unravels into it's a process of you pretty much sort of find what it is quite quickly.
Yeah.
I kind of just like to. For me, it's just taking the audience on a journey of and staying with it and keeping that movement
and that would and this applies to you too, Rupert. That thing of what you have on a script that you're getting your footage through and you're cutting it. Are you adapting it because the director says, actually, I want to go down that way?
I don't have a script. I just
don't have a script at all. You just
it's an area. So usually it's just about an idea,
right,
or about a character going through something. So it's usually it's funny actually. I mean, that was amazing. The world of docs and drama. I did a drama for the first time this year actually. And I didn't realise, only when I did it, I realised how unbelievably different they are. I mean, it's Mars and Venus, they're so different. In docs, I'm much more of a writer than an editor, because it's about finding the story and putting it on screen, whereas Jan's a real editor. When you do drama, it's really about sort of breathing life into footage and giving it a heartbeat. Because actually, when you watch stuff, even with the thing I did was with Stephen Graham, he's an amazing actor, but it's still dead. You watch, when you watch Rush's drama, they're dead. And you're thinking, that's a really great performance. And you put it together, you think, this is easy. And then you think, that's shit, I don't know how that works. And so the idea of how you breathe life into it is that's a real skill. But for me, in docs, the footage is alive. Everything's alive about it. And often what you're doing is you're tempering it just to turn it down often. It's the opposite way, because some things can be too emotional or too much. But it's got a real kind of, there's an innate power to documentary and documentary footage that it comes with. And all I'm doing is I'm trying to measure which bit to put first in order to tell the story in the right way.
Well, let's look. This is a clip from one of your shows. This is the 7/7 One Day in London. Let's look at the difference.
Got off the Victoria line at King's Cross and I made my way to the Piccadilly line, and then an announcement was made that there's going to be delays, and in that space of a few minutes loads of people now started to make their way onto the platform, and then before I knew it the platform was heaving with people and the train still hadn't come in.
So yeah, ran straight to the top, and the way that Moorgate Tube Station is, the escalator's at the top, and then I did a right, and then you're immediately on the platform. And then a tube was coming into the platform. And I thought, what a result.
And then at 8:48 the train came in. Couldn't get a seat. So I sort of went to the right and stood in front of the chairs. but just a little way from the doors.
It's only 1 or 2 stops to travel like this, where I couldn't raise my hands. I think my bag I was carrying was trapped somewhere 2 or 3 feet away from me, so my left arm was probably stretched out and caught between 2 other people.
I mean, I travelled on the Underground at that time for about 17, 18 years, and I'd never been on a train that packed.
I was looking round the other passengers because there was a chap sitting opposite me, James, I believe his name was, who had caught my eye. And so I was just looking at the other passengers. I'd finished reading the newspaper, I wasn't listening to an iPod, and the train pulled out into the tunnel. I remember the eastbound train coming in the other direction and the tracks alongside us.
I was still reading the Metro newspaper. And I remember there was suddenly a very loud bang.
I just started to see this light smoke, sort of like coming like past me. And then I felt quite light. And then I just felt to myself, oh, I felt like I was now beginning to float. And then I just said to myself, how embarrassing, I feel like I'm gonna faint. And that was it. I just went into darkness. Just went into darkness.
Tony, it's Darren.
Hello, Darren.
What's happening, mate? Do you know?
204 apparently has reported hearing an explosion on his train.
Explosion on train, yeah?
Or a bang on his train.
Hello, Pick, sorry.
Hello, mate. Yeah, Pick control there.
Yeah.
Just to let you know, we've got a TT op.
Yeah.
0850. Holloway Russell Square.
TT information, hello.
I'm the supervisor of Tollgate. We've just had a big explosion. There appears to be something ahead of the train in the track.
Has anyone been injured at all?
We're not aware that anybody's been injured as yet, no.
Okay.
But there is smoke.
Yeah.
We've lost all power as well.
No power?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now, you're not the only one that's actually had this done, so I'm going to confirm with my manager, and we'll be in touch with you in a sec, all right?
Yes, okay.
Okay, because I don't know whether anything's been called out. As soon as I know, I'll bring you back, all right?
Okay, thanks.
Thanks, bye.
Bye.
Incredible sequence. We will have further discussions on this. I'm going to throw this open now because I'm sure there will be lots of questions out there as well. If anybody would like to ask a question, please throw up their hand now. I'm struggling to see. Lights are going up. Hurrah, I can see you all. Go on, be bold. One question I wanted to ask as we get the microphone over here. Have we got one more question as well? Anybody else want? Okay, and also to this person over here. I just wanted to ask, before we ask these 2 people for their questions, when the map at the end, is that your invention to do that?
Yeah, that's the sort of. I mean, to be honest, the idea behind that film was that that was the first time people had spoken out openly about what happened, because there'd been an inquest and people had spoken up for the first time in public about it. So these people came forward and talked to us for the first time about their experiences. And we had 60 or thereabouts 3-hour-long interviews, which I watched all of and logged and arranged into a 90-minute film. And in that, doing that, we sort of realised that we need beats, because it was just talking heads. And so we had them listening to each other, and it was sort of lit in that way, so they looked like they were sat in carriages, which worked. But you needed a respite point where you just go, and effectively you cut to a wide shot, is what we always go like that, cut to a wide shot, like that, it gives you a breath, it's a lung full of air. And we didn't have that because we were stuck underground, and we did have sort of underground stuff, but shots of tunnels and stuff, but it's exactly the same, it's very claustrophobic. And so I thought we took the map and I inverted it and then did a it was all inside Avid. They just basically so we did all of that in Avid. And it was so effective, but it gave us a landscape to cut to, made us go.
Excellent. Let's go across here now for our first question.
Hi. When I edit, one of the biggest things I struggle with is trying to keep like fresh eyes. I'll edit something and then look at it again the next day, and it doesn't have the same effect as it did the day before. Do you guys have coping mechanisms to deal with sort of keeping fresh eyes, so to speak?
Yeah, I think editing's about pace, and it's about how you pace yourself as much as pacing the film. So often I spend a lot of my time trying not to do things, because or trying to
Try not to touch it.
Try not to touch it, because actually, and everyone comes in with loads of ideas, which is good. Yeah. But you don't want to do everything, because if you do everything, you'll just ruin it.
Yeah, it's a journey, isn't it? It's finding the film, you know. Sometimes, you know, if you cut the scene and you look at it the next day with fresh eyes, and it seems different. Sometimes, you know, it's being allowed to. I make a decision to sort of move on, and then maybe something by moving on in the story, something else in the story will affect me looking back at that part in a different way. So it's sometimes to react to everything all the time.
I also go for a walk, get away from it.
Yeah,
it's really important. You know, do something else, read a paper.
And also, it's a collaboration, so it's a process that has to be. You know, I have my opinion, and I take it to a certain point, but I know that I'm going to have to share this with other people. So, and I value their opinion too. So, which will help me steer it. But it's also, you know, editing is emotion and it's instinct and it's from your heart. So if you do something on one day, the next day, you know, you have a bad espresso or something, it might not be seen the same, but sometimes you have to sort of remember. I remind myself, it's like yesterday was a good day and it worked. So, and sometimes the other way to look at it is that you do change it and you evolve it. You come back with a fresh idea the next day. I mean, I describe them as blind alleyways. You take an edit down an alleyway, sometimes it's fruitless, you know, and you go, okay, but at least I can answer myself. I've tried. And if someone says, why don't we? I've been down that alleyway before, so, which is quite useful. Making mistakes work, you know.
Let's just hear there's another question over here.
Hi, my question is, when you start a new project, what kind of things are you looking for in that project when you get brought on? Is there like a specific quality that you find in the projects that you enjoy doing more, or is there something about the crew or?
Yeah.
I think you know, as Jan said, it's a very personal thing, editing, and you know, filmmaking in total is a very personal thing, because all we're basically functioning with is our instincts, and that goes for picking a project too, or working with people. You know, you know, you have friends and you sort of work with people, or you respect people, or you just like what they do, and that's a lot to do with personal taste. You know, and so you sort of think, you know, I'm quite, you know. And I based a lot of my decisions on that sort of what I feel in here about things, and you know, and also if I'm sort of slightly unsure about things, I got to listen to that, because that you know, it certainly, you know, for us, we're stuck in a room with someone, right, or with something, and you know, that's very real. You know, it's very real. I base
my decision on how much I get paid. No, that's completely untrue, actually. It's highly untrue. No, it's like Rupert says, it's personalities, it's people you like. I sometimes describe this industry as like a circus. And one day you're the lion tamer, the next day you're up on the trapeze. You know, it's like you know, and the people around you are the same. But ultimately, I love coming back to people that I work with, enjoy working with, and that goes across, you know, the crew to costume to makeup to the design. I mean, it's everything, the photography.
If I can throw in, if you're working, say, with a new director, somebody you've not worked with before, they've asked if you can do the show and everything's great, until you get into the cutting room and you realise you don't get on, you're struggling, she doesn't communicate the same way you do. What tips have you got?
Professionalism.
Yeah.
That's when you just got to be professional.
That's where you
I mean, ultimately, it's not the whole act of filmmaking is a collaborative experience, and so what you do then, if that relationship, I mean, you know, and ultimately, everyone wants the best for it. They may not be able to articulate that particularly well in those moments, and some people get very emotional, And you know, I've been in cutting rooms where literally things have been thrown at the wall and smashes, and like people go. I had a screening where a director walked up and resigned on the spot halfway through a screening. It's very emotional business, but it's still just filmmaking, you know. And so you have to be pragmatic, and you have to be professional, and you have to sort of reach for the things that do work. And not sort of you know, get stuck in the stuff that doesn't.
Well, it's an interesting process, isn't it? Because in many ways you're scrutinising it, and you're, you know, there's one way of looking at it is you actually look at all the negatives in order to bring out all the positives.
Yeah.
And if you're with someone who, like you say, is maybe you know, we've both been there, I'm sure, and that's hard, that you have to push the work in order for them to see the positives, and then you can, maybe the relationship bonds, or it doesn't, or ultimately you get fired. And
no, I think it's the professionalism, I think, is the key, isn't it?
Yes.
I'd like to look at our third clip now, which is the Sky Atlantic piece Fortitude that you worked on. I think it'll be, if we could talk, let's see the clip first, but I think it'd be good to just talk through, when you get a set of rushes, how you start to pull things together as a piece of storytelling. Let's have a look at Fortitude.
Close ebbs, life's changing day. Earth grows dim, its glories pass away. Change and decay. And all around I see I need thy presence every passing hour. What but thy grace can foil the tempter's power? Can guide and stay with me. Oh, God and sunshine, abide with me.
There's sort of two sets of rushes.
Yeah, so the first set of rushes, obviously, a man clearly shaving in the mirror, which is a couple of shots from obviously the side and the front, and then there was lots of footage with a man preparing, which hopefully was clear, that he was preparing some stuff to take with him on a journey, and ultimately to go and commit suicide on the side of a mountain, which is, you know, I like the visualization of it in sort of using the metaphors of the first shot with the sort of razor blade being very close to him sort of looking at it in that way. But the two scenes were shot separately, so it's one of my favourite things, kind of cutting through time, jump cutting through them, changing sort of two timelines, becoming one timeline. So I sort of took the, you know, his singing and cut his preparation of preparing his little elements to take with him, his Walkman and his, you know, his vodka, clearly, and applied that and kept the, and he performed this lovely moment in the middle, so it was sort of off script, where he hummed. So once I found the hum, I was like, well, I've got this humming now, which I can keep the singing alive through the moment. And I sort of slightly took it away just as he found the handgun, which I kind of hid from the audience slightly, because obviously you have that revelation later. Put the two things together and then sort of bookended the scene with the sort of reprisal of him now, slightly different shot looking at the razor blade again. So if you see it in the context of the story, it all makes sense. It's slightly difficult to see when the clip's isolated like this, but I love the notion of the visual photography of how the audience is so, not to underestimate audiences, because how you visually look at something, and in one hand he has, he's holding the morphine, or the next he's holding the tape, and the next cuts, and you understand it. It's a language that we all understand, and for me, that's a very interesting way of telling stories.
And that interpretation, are you then presenting that to the director, saying, this is what I...
Yeah, he'll be filming at that point, and he'll get those two scenes, and they'll be separated in a script, and I'll look at and I'll just think, oh, that's a bit boring, and I'll just put this together, and quite often what a director will say is going, it's not what I intended, but I really like it.
Yeah.
And then it stays, and then you'll go to the producers, and they're sort of, we love it, and it moves on, and people will tell you if they don't. But I always find that you're going on, talking about the blind alleys, you're going on to something that works quite quickly. It's also a way of compressing story in time.
Yeah. Again, I'd like to look at another clip now of Rupert's, which is a life and death row, because I think there's, again, very, very different, but some similarities in terms of how do you structure, how do you intercut. But let's look at the clip first. Life and
Your state has executed 234 death row inmates, more than any other governor in modern times. When you make that mention of the execution of 234 people drew applause.
I think Americans understand justice. And it's a state-by-state issue. But in the state of Texas, you kill one of our children, you kill a police officer, you're involved with another crime and you kill one of our citizens, you will face the ultimate justice, and that is you will be executed.
My school, all I know is that there's a family emergency and I'm just going home. They're not going to find out what it is. They're all assuming that maybe, it's maybe like a sibling has some type of terminal disease or cancer, and we're just waiting for them to take their last breath. I don't want this to affect me throughout my college career, people finding out what it is and know, oh, I'm that girl whose brother's on death row. I don't need people's pity because of my brother. I want them to treat me as I am, or how I act at school. I don't want them to think of me any differently.
My parents provided me with every opportunity. They gave me what I needed to make good decisions. I choose to make bad decisions, and that's me, and I place no blame on no one else but me.
Well, I'm in a hotel right now. We'll be here for like a week until all this is over.
I know that this is overwhelming, but Anthony really stands out from a lot of the clients I've seen, and I can't predict as much as I know about the case. It's very difficult.
Okay. Well, you can call any time, Mr. Ellis. His attorney, Mr. Richard Ellis, he's actually taken Anthony's case personal. He believes that he should not be on death row. He said that it could go to the wire, meaning to the end on Thursday, but he believes that he should get a stay. We still have 72 hours, before it happens. I mean, we're still counting down.
powerful piece of television. Rupert, I understand you and the director, Ben Anthony, you sort of set out some rules about how you're going to show this?
Yeah, well, only the beginning of that project, you know, we talk about picking projects and choosing things, and that we had, there's been a lot made about death row, and originally that film was supposed to be every execution done by Texas over 1 year. And so Ben filmed 19 executions, and we had loads of stuff, loads of stories, and it was quite overwhelming, to be honest with you. And it ended up just being 2 stories, which sort of felt for us that they sort of showed what we wanted to show. And we set out some sort of dogma rules, and I think it's kind of important. Filmmaking needs a bit of dogma. Sometimes you need to give yourself a wall to push a film against, because otherwise it could be anything and you just go mad then. It could be, especially in docs, it could just go on forever. So what we wanted to be clear about is that we didn't want to give the audience any sense of which side we were on. There's been a lot of sort of anti-death penalty films made, and that's totally fair enough. The issue, though, for us is that we wanted not to sort of do one of those again, because there's been a lot of that done. If you sort of say, you know, innocent people get executed, absolutely. So all the people or the 2 people that we ended up with both said yes, they did it, and you know, and we wanted to be balanced, and so in order to be able to sort of play that out narratively, it is a bit of a trick, you know. So and also we had no commentary, you know, so they had to tell their own stories, and so yeah, so those sorts of edges really help filmmaking and make things, you know, give definition to things. And it's the same in drama. You know, the idea about giving things edges is really important in filmmaking.
I noticed that both clips, the most powerful parts is when people weren't talking, there's people looking, and just, you know, this what's not being said actually speaks louder, right? It's incredible.
I mean, that's quite mad. I mean, the other thing is, I have to say, for Ben, you know, and the team that made that first series, and it doesn't really come across in the clip, but it gives you the idea about what broadcast television expects. The guys who were interviewed on death row were interviewed 24 hours before their execution, right? So you imagine that, going in, walking into a penitentiary with a film crew, knowing that the person you're going to be talking to is facing their imminent death. It's an extraordinary thing, and the footage, in terms of, you know, we were talking before about breathing life into drama, but finding balance in documentary. The footage was wired in this, absolutely wired. The thing I would say to you is, if you want to make people cry or feel things at home with documentaries, don't have anyone cry. Don't show people crying. You want to hold on to that emotion. What it means is then the audience have to try and they then take that responsibility on their shoulders, and so they'll start crying for you. But you know, both. I think in 7/7, I think we had 2 instances of people crying, but right at the end of the film. 90 minutes you've gone through, and there's plenty to cry about in that. And I think I don't think we have anyone crying in Life and Death Row.
Well, you won't cry for Michael Gamble, and he's still alive, by the way. That's the big difference between the worlds, though, isn't it? You know, you're dealing with this, you know, like you say, this 24 hours.
Let's see if anybody else would like ask some questions at this point. We can just get, okay, we have the 2 here, actually. So yes, that microphone here, and then there's this lady here. Just get another microphone, just pass it along. So if we could start with you at the back.
Yeah, some great work. That was amazing. I've directed and edited my first 2 student productions, and I'm now going into 3rd year, and now I'm just directing. So I wonder if you've got any tips for do's and don'ts of how to work with the editor. So it's the most beneficial experience, because I've never done that before, because I've always edited my own stuff. So yeah.
Don't tell them that you've edited.
Keep that a secret.
Keep that a secret. Yeah. And sit on your hands. Just sit on your hands. No, I'm joking. I think, you know, it depends on who you work with. It's a relationship, you know. and what you want to find is someone that you connect with, you know, filmically, so that you trust their instincts. I mean, often we get picked by, I'm going to get very loud when I look at Jan, I'm just going to often we get picked because we have the way we cut is fairly obvious. I mean, that's the other thing to bear in mind, is that in this world, your work is scrutinized. It's open. You know, everyone can see all the decisions you make, good and bad. You know, we sit down and have screenings, and sometimes you go, oh God, it's just shit. And you've got to sort of live through that stuff and learn from it. And because we work instinctively, you find we work with people. I work very well with Ben Anthony because we have a similar taste. You know, we work well together. And half the trick for directors is finding editors that correspond and connect with them, not just just in friendship terms, but actually aesthetically and emotionally, that they get the same sort of stuff. And if you can find those relationships are really worth sustaining as well. So working with the same editor time and time again, you know, I get phone calls from all sorts of young filmmakers wanting to cut with me because they like the films that I've done, and I sort of encourage them to go and work with young editors that they can grow together and create brilliant things together, you know, learn together.
Yeah, and do you get that as well? Do you get people
brave, you know,
saying, please, can I come and sit in with you in the cutting room?
Yes, no, all the time, yeah. Answering the question, though, I mean, I've actually done, I've gone the other way. I've gone directed second unit, and I you know, on my own material, and had another editor cut it, and I find the process going the other way. I go onto a film set, and I'm like, what's all this? Why is it so slow? Why, you know, we've got to sit through all this stuff again, and I've shot some stuff, and I've come back and cut it, and I've you know, expedited and gone straight for it, what I need, because I think like an editor. Mm. And I've come back and someone else has cut it and they're like, well, you didn't get this and you didn't get that. And it's because I've just gone completely for what I want, but it doesn't give you that option. So doing, what I will say is I think, you know, it's admirable that you cut your own work, but I think it's, the two things are separate entities, and they're both very challenging, you know. I think I admire people that do both, but I think it's good to focus on one. I think pick one and be good at it is probably the...
You get people that do both and are pretty
you do,
good, don't you? I mean, I think, you know, I don't think I could do it though. I think what's really good, you know, we were talking about being able to have fresh eyes on something. That's a case in point, isn't it? I mean, you know, half the time it's not about, you know, half the time it's just about sitting next to someone and watching it with them and them going, this is boring. And you're going, this isn't boring. Do you know how long this took me to make? Yeah. But you sort of feed off that a bit, and then you start looking at it and think, maybe it is boring. Maybe what I've done is boring.
Especially in the early days, I think, by the time the directors got into the cutting room, there's been so much work gone on that they're kind of inside the goldfish bowl. Mm. You'd like to think that you're slightly further outside the goldfish bowl. You probably go in, but...
I've had a director sort of leave me at sort of 6:30 in the evening and sort of just thinking, I had a thought of, what if we did this silly idea, I know, but, and they leave, you know, and you sit there going, and you... 5 hours later, it's 1 o'clock in the morning. It's like, ta-da!
It's very clever directing.
And it's directing, you know. That's what is that relationship. You know, sometimes it's bouncing off.
Okay,
the ideas,
let's ask the other question.
Hello, I was just wondering, when you're editing a documentary, and it's something maybe you don't agree. I mean, I don't know, you stand on death penalty or things like that. But how do you keep documentaries like this as objective as possible while editing something that is quite emotional? Is that?
Well, you can still be emotional, but without sort of nailing your colours to the mast, can you? I mean, I think that's the thing, is I think there's a truth to that situation, and the truth is what the truth is. What we didn't want to be is too partisan about it, about how you presented it. So, you know, and so to find balance, it was really interesting, because what we ended up with, I don't know if you saw the whole film, the beginning is, it's split in half effectively, and so what the clip was the middle bit. And that's the then governor of Texas giving his sort of views on death penalty. They love it in Texas. They love it. So and that's right in the middle of the film. So the first half of the film was the execution of a guy called Richard Cobb, and we followed the victim. There was someone was died, someone was raped. Attempted murder, and the girl who was an attempted murder and rape, we followed her and her family through the process of that execution, so the week running up to it and the execution itself. and there was a lot of vitriol with them, and a lot of sort of very understandable feelings of trying to sort of let things go and trying to be just trying to sort of realising this was an end for them, and it was quite hard to sort of, there was lots of sort of very red-blooded kind of stuff from them, which some of it was very awkward and hard to watch. And to balance it, I had to tell Richard Cobb's story in the most dramatic way possible. So people sort of felt, often when they watched that he sort of deserved to die. And then, after he's executed, I put in his mother, who just then talks about him as a child. And it just makes you go, vook, and just turns you upside down. And then we go on to Houston, and then we're with the perpetrator's family going through that process. The point is the death penalty is nonsense because it's not good for anyone. No one gets any respite from it at all. You know, the victims or the victims' families are kept in this sort of point of their life where they're stuck in that moment until that person is executed, often 10 years later. So they can't grieve, they can't get on. The wound is open for that long, and the perpetrators are basically they are irredeemable. For 10 years, they're told that they are the sum total of the worst decision they ever made in their life. It's a pointless exercise. And that's obvious. So we didn't need to. But if you tell the story straight, I mean, it's interesting. There were people we played it to, and who were pro-death penalty, and they watched it and said, "Absolutely right, brilliant. It's a pro-death penalty film." We thought that was an amazing success. We thought, well, okay, fair enough. Good. That's the right.
Let's move on now to a complete different part of editing, which is Jan with The Crown, which is a huge budget, I understand, that Netflix have paid for this. I think we should have a look at the clip first, but I quite like, because I think sound and the ability, what you can play around and do with it is an area that possibly in editing people don't think about, and actually it's a crucial area. So let's have a look at the clip of The Crown first.
Well done, Porchy.
Yes, indeed. Well done, Porchy. I hear he's been given a direct line.
Who?
Porchy, so we can call straight in. I know only because I tried to get one for Mike and was refused.
Yes.
On account of him not being a family member.
Porchy is like family.
Is he?
Yes. Part of the furniture.
Well, as long as you don't sit on him anytime soon.
Well, that all seemed to go well.
Yes, it did, didn't it?
You're right.
Can you leave us now, please? Yes, Mum. I have nothing to hide from you. Nothing. Porchy is a friend. And yes, there are those who would have preferred me to marry him. Indeed, marriage with him might have been easier. Might have even worked better than ours. But to everyone's regret and frustration, the only person I have ever loved is you. And can you honestly look me in the eye and say the same? Can you?
may silence for Her Majesty the Queen.
My lords, ladies and gentlemen, dear Winston, and Lady Churchill. My confidence in Sir Anthony is complete, and I know he will lead the country on to great achievements. But it would be useless to pretend that either he or any of those successors who may one day follow him in office will ever, for me, be able to hold the place of my first Prime Minister, to whom my husband and I owe so much, and for whose wise guidance during the early years of my reign I shall always be so profoundly grateful.
I'm sorry we had to cut that one so short. We could have gone on forever, but
Yes.
It's actually really important to hear kind of.
Well,
why was it cut the way-
I think the headline is less is more, isn't it? I think is with sort of sound is so important. Of sort of having that emptiness and that space and the sort of the chillingness of just hearing the clock and the ticking and the bird and the birds and. But this scene was really interesting because we picked this scene up afterwards. They had clearly had the argument, and that was the visual part of the argument. And we came up with the idea of picking up the scene of the two of them in the Land Rover, which we didn't run sound on, so they sort of argued about various things that we couldn't hear. And I used this sort of, again, playing with the timeline. So you clearly knew you knew by the big pushing on the Queen, that there was an argument that we didn't see. We chose to show it, but I used it sort of in different parts of the story, as we cut the clip, but as it continues, we continue the argument and Philip leaves the Land Rover. And it was just, for me, it was about sort of taking everything away and using those silences as driving the emotion, lifting it, allowing the audiences just, to just make their own assumptions. And the use of sound is just incredible. I mean, taking the music away and,
I once remember actually doing watching a show. Actually, it was a very, very early days of VR, so this shows how long ago it was. But I thought it was a cracking piece of editing where there was a doctor's got to go in and basically tell this man who's standing in the waiting room with a newly born baby, his wife, new mother's been rushed into been rushed into emergency, having the childbirth. So the baby's fine. Is mother going to be okay or not? And the final scene was just, he walks in and informs the father that she's not survived the operation. And the way they shot it, there was no sound whatsoever. You just see the guy take a deep breath. He goes in through one waiting room into another, and you're seeing it through the glass. And all you see is these two guys talking. The guy holding the baby just drops his head down. That's all you need to see. It's the most dramatic end of an episode ever. Yeah. And again, it's a similar thing. It's not what you're hearing, it's what you're seeing. Yeah. And how that story.
Well, it's that great evolution. It's, the silent movies, sort of that progression of how we tell stories, and it's the visual medium first. And it's so important. I love stripping away sound and then music, and then as well as applying music and using sound to make cuts work as well. So
you're obviously dealing with broadcasters not just in the UK. You're dealing with American broadcasters as well. Do you feel like there is a lot more different influences coming in on what people want in terms of finished shows?
I don't know. I mean, for me, docs is it's much smaller entity than drama. I mean, if you sort of look at that, you sort of see the money sort of dripping off it. I mean, that said, whenever you make a film, it's all important, whether it's 100 million or £100, frankly. Yeah. People are invested in it. I mean, what fundamentally our job is we are the sort of mediators of the film in many ways. So we have a lot of influences. The best editors are the ones that can make everyone feel listened to, but listen to the best idea and make that work. you know, and I think that's the thing.
Yeah.
Is you know, we're there to sort of take all of
Well,
that,
it's
take
telling
all
your
that great
story,
footage, take all those great ideas, and put them in the best way possible, and let things play out on screen in the best way possible. And that goes for, you know, whether you've got 9 execs or 1.
Yeah. I mean, I think that, you know, it's interesting. The world is changing fast, isn't it? And how we receive, you know, media now. You know, so with the sort of streaming is sort of you know, I find it all very fascinating that yeah, I'm not sure whether that's a UK thing or American thing or it's just a global thing. It's just we're beginning to choose what we like and what we want. You know, where this, I mean, I grew up in the world of television, which was the notion of sort of, can't wait till 10 o'clock, which I love, and I still love that. And I think it's somewhere in there that losing that is slightly odd. And we've sort of manoeuvred into this world of, you know, I know what I like and what is made for me, and I sort of binge it, and I hate that word, but it's changing very fast. I mean, and that is must affect how broadcasting companies must view what they make and how they make it. I mean, not so much for docos, but certainly in drama.
I think it has an effect on everything. I think there was something brilliant about schedules, actually.
Yeah.
That actually you could watch a brilliant drama and then an amazing documentary or something, current affairs, and you would be surprised often in the evening. In a way, I don't think people are anymore. I don't think that the world of the diversified world of 1 minute sound clips or video helps people actually explore broader. I think it narrows people down to what they like. It becomes so specific that
also that weekly thing. I admire HBO. They still do that sort of weekly with Thrones and Westworld and their shows. And it gives you a sort of week. You have a week where you discuss it with other people, and then you're sort of looking forward to that. And I think that's
it is that thing, isn't it, to exchange comments about it with other people that you know they've also watched it rather than.
There's no events, are there? Very few events anymore where people go. You know, you might get it with some X Factor or Strictly or some of those sort of water cooler things.
I think that there's also the what's standing out from the crowd in marketing terms. The Crown, obviously, a lot of publicity.
Yeah.
The last clip we've got now, actually, just to watch is one of yours, Rupert, which is the Absolutely Fashion inside British Vogue that was done for BBC Two. Now, again, just because of the kind of characters you've got on board, there's a lot of interest in it.
I mean, I think
I was going to say, let's have a look at the clip and then we'll talk about it. Let's see the clip first.
March 15th. Hooray! We've finally been given access to a big celebrity shoot. And it's one everyone in the office is very excited about. Patsy and Adina from the sitcom Ab Fab are doing a photo shoot with Georgia May Jagger, daughter of Mick Jagger and Jerry Hall. They're being shot by David Bailey, but he's laid down some strict guidelines. I mustn't shoot him, and I mustn't shoot the shoot, which actually makes things kind of impossible.
We're not allowed. We're not been allowed to film any of the actual photos. So there's not much we can get from this.
I think she looks cool. Yeah, there you are. Yeah. She does look cool.
She looks amazing.
I think I look amazing. Have you got this shot?
Yes, great, thank you.
I think I look amazing. Yeah, I think so.
You know, it's everybody's sort of idea of what fashion people are like, and they're larger than life and hilariously funny and, falling out of cabs and doing all that malarkey. And of course we're, very well behaved in comparison, but they make it fun.
You must have fallen out of some cabs in
I've
your time.
fallen out of some cabs, yeah, I've definitely fallen out of some cabs.
Is there portrayal of fashion, is it ludicrous or is it rooted in reality?
It's probably a bit of both. I mean, I think there were those days in the 80s, for sure, and mad, up all night and partying, and we did have those days. And I think it's very different now. Everybody is incredibly professional now. I think there's a lot of money at stake. I think people's careers are taken very seriously. But for sure, like all good comedy, it's rooted in the truth.
It's 100 years of Vogue this year.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, what a fantastic legacy.
It's fantastic. Yeah, it's fantastic. I mean, I remember when it started. Do I? No, I don't. I don't remember when it started, but it just seems always to have been there, doesn't it? Always just sort of in our zeitgeist. Yeah, always here, always in vogue.
You two would have been, remember the heyday of Vogue, I suppose. The 60s and the 70s, is that right?
Well, yeah. I was pretty much, on every cover in those days. I think it was Vogue. I'm probably too young to actually remember it, but I remember the idea of it. Yeah. Mainly. Yeah. Because the great thing about Vogue, especially American Vogue, is even if it's summer, it's always winter.
British Vogue, not American Vogue.
British Vogue isn't the same. It's always don't work. Spring when it's autumn. Don't work.
And will Vogue be here in 100 years' time?
Yeah. Yes. And we'll be here to see it. But it's going to be online. Online Vogue, yes. It'll be Vogue online. Do you know what that means? No, I don't know.
So how do you cut a shoot that doesn't have a shoot to shoot?
Well, that was fun. So that was 2 one-hour films, which I signed up for. Again, it's this idea about sort of what rings your bell. And basically, Richard Mesa, who made that film, is a brilliant filmmaker, but he's also brilliantly awkward. He's quite tall, and he sort of comes into the room with a bit of energy, and people sort of react a bit to him. And I knew what we would end up with. I knew we would end up with something where we would slightly wrong foot them with it. But what we wanted to do, but there's something really interesting about that in terms of the documentary, because with fashion, we're so used to sort of seeing something that's really polished, a sort of hermetically sealed presentation of the world of fashion. It very knows what it is. And what was brilliant about him is that he's so not that everyone was sort of a little bit like this, and so we left things long, because it was just sort of funny, Bless them. I mean, that was, Jennifer and, Joanna Lumley, totally improvising on the spot, and he would just literally stop there. And so when they sort of looked like that, they were supposed to do it in character, and they were brilliant for that. They didn't know what he was going to ask them, and it was entirely improvised. But we would have moments like that with people that worked at Vogue, and what I didn't want to do is I didn't want to make people laugh at Vogue, because Vogue are brilliant and it's run by some amazing women, but it works in a very particular way, and so we basically put all the weight of the humour onto Richard's shoulders, so you could laugh at Richard being bumbling and sort of saying, oh God, this is what I've got to deal with, but actually get to see underneath, inside that world. And so the whole approach for that series was like that. So it sort of presented it in a slightly different way. I have to say that people that love fashion absolutely hated it. They completely hate. Well, they wanted. I mean, I can totally understand it. It was not made for people who love Vogue, and actually, because the BBC couldn't do that, they wouldn't be able to make a sort of branded film. But those that didn't, those that weren't sort of fashionistas, they really enjoyed it because they saw it for what it was. But but it was great.
But again,
fun
you've got to sort of cut something for an audience. This was for
totally, yeah, no, for a sort of and I really enjoyed making it because it had a sort of different heartbeat about it. And Richard's brilliant, he's really funny. He's just a very funny guy.
It's comedy, isn't it?
Fantastic.
Kind of, yeah.
Now, has anybody else got any more questions? We don't have a lot of time left, I'm afraid, so we're going to have to rattle through and try and get some questions in. If a microphone can come here, and in the meantime, a microphone over to here, to this gentleman here. We'll start with you.
Hi, Rupert, you mentioned that you're much more of a writer than an editor. Can you kind of explain that in terms of structuring and crafting a narrative in documentary?
Well, often the structure, I'll help fundamentally with creating the structure of a film. That's what it's what I'm sort of employed to do. Obviously, we all get involved in that, but there's a sort of, where I'll watch all the rushes. So the thing I'm doing at the moment, I'm doing a thing called War Child at the moment, following 3 children crossing Europe. with all the borders closed, and I've sort of watched the 200 or so hours of footage, and I've picked the first shot and the last shot, and and all the scenes in between, and so that's what I mean. Whereas with a drama, you've at least got a starting point, and yes, as Jan sort of very eloquently described, you can mix that up, but I don't have second takes of anything. So it's either sort of, do I introduce this character? We get rid of lots of characters, and it's sort of rather more fundamental point, to how we structure stuff in documentaries. Less finessing, more sort of groundwork. Yeah.
Okay, there's another one over here, wasn't there?
Rupert, so both the first 2 docs we saw, they're quite similar and they're sort of quite chilling.
Mm-hmm.
Do you feel like once you sort of get into the industry, you choose quite specifically what you want to sort of hone on in like genre?
Well, yeah and no. I like to do, that's why I did Vogue, because I thought it'd be funny. You know what I mean? And you've got to live. I don't want to, that stuff like doing, like 7/7, yeah, I watched every single one of that, and they're unbelievably strong interviews. I mean, Ben is an amazing interviewer, but also we were blessed with these people. We had some people in that film that hadn't even told their nearest and dearest they were there. And so they were literally, it's the first time they'd said anything. And it's incredibly powerful stuff. And you walk home with that, that's there. I remember some of those interviews are here. You can't do that 24/7. You will go nuts. And so we talk about pace. It's also pace in terms of your career. You've got to go, right, I need a bit of something else here. I'm going to do something different, a different shape of documentary, or a different, I always try and push myself forward. I've done a lot of sort of series, big series, and asked to go back, broadcasters and production companies. If you do a good job and you do a first series and it gets recommissioned, I'm going to cut the first series of The Apprentice. And I got phoned every year to go back, and I only did the first series, didn't want to do it again. Not that I don't like it, but it was just, I've done it, And so I think it's, if you get the opportunity to move forward and you feel you're moving forward, then you should,
Yeah, and it's the same with drama. Did you sit there and think, now really I should be doing this one next, or?
Yeah, it's nice to, it's more genre, isn't it? So it's nice to, mix it up and, go something, go from science fiction to...
And if you were trying to get into drama now, what would you, are there any tips you'd offer for people trying to they're desperate to become a drama editor?
Don't do it. No, tips is, as I said before, sort of believe in yourself, your instinct, and storytelling, and learn off. For me, learn off other people around you is great. There's some fabulous people. I work with editors that I adore, and it's that sort of osmosis, isn't it? Is you sort of think you're sort of, why am I doing this? And then all of a sudden, everything they've done is soaked up. I've soaked everything, and it all goes in, and that's what we are, isn't it? And be humble and patient. Very patient.
Definitely be
Okay.
patient.
Any more questions?
I have to say, sorry, can I just add one?
Add one more thing.
With in terms of Sean Barton, who was the Return of the Jedi editor, said to me, do docs. He said because it will take you 11 years if you want to cut drama. So if you're any good, you'll get a chance to do dramas, but do docs. You'll get there quicker.
Okay. Well, no, we passed the microphone up there, and then have we got on the far right-hand side?
In the corner.
In the corner. Can we get another microphone up there? We could take your question in the meantime.
When editing a scene with a specific mood, do you take influences from any other films or pieces of work? And how do you add your own trademark if you do?
I try to avoid watching anything in the similar subject, personally. I think actually it's very personal, and if you do sort of, I think also, I don't know about, Jan will have to answer for drama, but for documentaries, the stuff is so particular. You can get similar, you can get films made, it's like War Child, Exodus has been made, which is an amazing 3-part series, sort of, brilliant. And I watched the first one, thought it was brilliant, then didn't want to watch any more because I thought, actually, you know what, I don't want it to be a contrarian indicator. I don't want to sort of watch something and go, I've got to do the opposite of it. You know what I mean? I would rather be open. Also the other thing is, I have to say, if you're going to do a job in film and TV, we are the crappiest audiences of anything in that particular genre. I find it really hard to watch documentaries because I just sit there and just deconstruct them. You know, it's terrible.
Yeah.
You know, I will watch comedies, I'll watch sport. Unless a friend of mine has made it or I've been told to watch it, I will find it really hard to watch because I watch a feature doc occasionally, but you know, I spend my life watching documentaries, you know, so it's sort of, you know, all my time off, you know, I'm going to watch a nice earnest documentary about, you know, heart surgery. So no, I'm not.
Basically, you've got to watch all of Jan's, and Jan's got to watch all of yours.
Yeah, I'm inspired by this man. I have been for many years. It's slightly different for me. I think I take inspiration in everything. You know, if I see a Picasso, it's an inspiration. So if I see a nice piece of clothing, it's that how the piece of clothing is cut. It's the same way I look at the film, and by watching other people's film, it's a huge influence of that.
You soak it all up.
You soak it all up, and it's not so much about sort of let's take reference to it at the point we're making the film. And I think directors probably do that. Go in drama.
Sure.
They magpies and they put it all together. I go into it completely. I go into it without that influence, but then I find someone sort of says, "You did that like that sort of film Trainspotting." I did. I didn't know I did that. Yeah. So somewhere in all that, we learn off each other.
Yeah. We should take this question that was in the corner.
Hi, you talked about the silence in the films that you cut, but what I wanted to know is when and how you decide to bring in the music, at what point of the cut, and do you allow the footage that you have to dictate what music you'll bring in, or sometimes do you allow the music to dictate the cut?
Yeah, they sort of go hand in hand. It's a sort of interesting process. Sometimes I cut without the sound, so I just
submerge.
And sometimes, and then sometimes I sort of get halfway through the scene, and the sort of scene's sort of working or not working, and I'll bring some music to it, and I'll put the music on, and that will sort of influence how I start using the shots or stay on shots, and they sort of go together. And then sometimes, and then at the end of it, that music's really influenced that scene, and I'll take the music away and completely change it and then move it. And it's quite often, it's sort of, it's this sort of emotional glue in many ways, but sometimes sort of there's ways of that music can sort of, be the emotional glue, and you sort of move it to a different half of the scene. It completely changes the scene. And I won't lie to you, quite often I've done that, and it's been an accident. The music slipped down there, and I've played it, and I've gone, well, that's better than how I had it before. So it's a discovery of trial, and tribulation. So
as a link, as a last question, that was perfection for me, because I have to tell everybody that the next session this afternoon is going to be about sound.
There you go.
Which is at 1 o'clock in this auditorium.
Yeah.
But in the meantime, you've all got to go to the Riverfront Cafe for a spot of lunch. But all I have to say is, it's been fantastic, guys. Thank you very much for giving us an insight into your worlds. Thank you.
Well done.